Hello everybody, my name is Caretaker and I run the Discord server tutorial entity. It is a server for teaching people about Dead by Daylight, a general hangout, and just a place for everyone to look into lore and figure out more things about the game. So I wanted to do a couple of videos about the new survivor as well as the new killer, but right now we're going to be focusing on the new survivor, Zarina Kassir. We're going to go over their backstory, and then I'm going to go over her perks, and then next we're going to do the killer in another video. So, I hope you enjoy. Also, before I get into this, I apologize for my voice sounding a little off, I'm a little nasally. I've been a little sick, I apologize, but I still want to get the video out. So, without further ado, growing up in a Lebanese household in Brooklyn, Zarina struggled with two unique cultural identities. She felt this cultural difference painted a target on her back. To avoid ridicule and bullies, she observed what popular kids liked and learned to project the image they preferred. At school, she would go by the name Karina, dye her hair lighter, and trash her foreign lunches. At home, the news channel was always on. Urgent reports of injustice captivated Zarina, inspiring her to produce her own stories. When she was a teenager, she embraced her real name and roots and borrowed her father's digital camera to interview members of her community in Bay Ridge. By posting her content online, she slowly built a loyal following. Each week, she picked a new issue and challenged people to speak their mind on camera. When she heard a rumor that a fast food restaurant owner was exploiting workers, she decided to go undercover and produce a hard-hitting film. She modified her look, faked an accent, and secured a waitress position at the restaurant. After 3 weeks of unpaid work, she was fired for demanding her paycheck. To retaliate, she posted clips of the restaurant owner's abusive behavior, and within hours, the news had picked up her story, but somehow spun it to create sympathy for the restaurant owner. Embittered by the experience, Zarina committed to become an independent producer and filmmaker. Her first feature film was for a competition at school, inspired by an English class poem about Sacco and Vanzetti, two Italian migrants controversially executed for murder. Her film won first prize and launched her as an uncompromising documentary filmmaker. Months later, her world turned upside down. A public video surveillance camera filmed her father carrying two coffees at a street corner a few blocks from home. A tall, hooded man stood behind him. The man shouted something at her father, who took a step back, startled. Suddenly and unexpectedly, the man pushed him in the street as a car sped by. His death sent a shockwave of anger and pain that left Serena in pieces. The perpetrator, Clark Stevenson, was soon arrested and incarcerated for manslaughter. Serena became obsessed with Clark, his gang, IR-28. His short prison sentence, his apparent lack of remorse. A year went by and she'd uncovered enough about Clark to shed more light on this crime. With the last of her inheritance, she bought a new camera and a plane ticket to Nebraska and bribed the warden at Hellshire Penitentiary to let her interview Clark. She filmed their first meeting and asked him about her father and his gang and his violent tendencies. Clark refused to talk, but in the weeks that followed, she used her research to push his buttons and finally got a confession of a premeditated crime. Serena's film became a tribute to her father and the trail of blood left by gang violence. When the news finally picked up a story, it was because the film had gained international acclaim. Some inmates contacted her when they heard about her documentary. Most of them shared eccentric anecdotes in hopes of being filmed, but one story stood out from the rest. An entire wing of Hellshire Penitentiary was sealed off because of the Mad Mick Massacre. The official story was an Irish outlaw had heartlessly slaughtered the warden and his guards. From working on her Sacco and Vanzetti films, Zarina knew that the official story wasn't always the true story. She investigated Hellshire's records and found an Irish-born inmate sentenced to 15 years for assault in 1860. According to the penitentiary's blueprints, the sealed-off wing was part of Hellshire's original infrastructure. If she reached that sealed-off section, she could shed some light on the Mad Mick story. All she needed was a way in. Next morning, she was joining the Hellshire Penitentiary walking tour. She blended in the crowd of jet-lagged tourists and veered off when they headed toward the kitchen. She memorized the blueprint and knew exactly where to go and how to avoid surveillance cameras. An unexpected security detail nearly cut her investigation short, but she was able to hide under an old dusty prison bed. When the guards disappeared, she continued her search and finally found Mick's cell. Entering the dark, dilapidated cell, Zarina ran her hand across the old brick wall. Her fingers felt the marking and traced the letters, "Death to Bayshore." A loose brick fell, revealing a gap. She inserted her hand. Fingers landed on a piece of cold, cracked metal. She fished it out. An old, rusty wrench. A damp chill ran down her spine and she looked down. A man lay at her feet, bleeding, his limbs contorted and his eyes dark and terrified. Her father's eyes. A pool of crimson blood on black pavement. Paralyzed, black fog filled the cell, and she shut her eyes to push these nightmarish visions out of her mind. Now, Zarina has 3 teachable perks, as they all do, and those teachables are For the People, Off the Record, and Red Herring. Her first perk, For the People, you risk life and injury for others. For the People is only active while at full health. Press the active ability button when healing another survivor without a medkit to instantly heal them from dying to injured or from injured to healthy. You become injured and receive the broken status effect for 90 seconds. You become the obsession. Equipping this perk decreases your chances to be the killer's obsession at the start of the trial. We can write our own story and decide how it really ends. Now this is definitely a perk that is created, I feel, for slugging. I think that's where it's going to be the most powerful. That, or someone who may be running resilience and used to being injured and wants to help get quick pickups for their team and something like that. It's a niche perk, but I think it definitely fits in the game, and I've been really hoping for a perk where I can swap health states. The 90-second broken's a bit rough, but I'm sure we can deal with it. Her next perk, Off the Record. You've learned that a quiet approach is sometimes best. Once you are unhooked or escape from the hook, Off the Record activates for 80 seconds. While Off the Record is active, your aura will not be shown to the killer, and grunts of pain caused by injuries are reduced by 100%. Trust me, I investigate thoroughly and discreetly. Zarina, Kassir. Now this perk is definitely not bad. It's Iron Will and Distortion basically baked into one. I mean, I understand that the activation's a bit rough. You basically have to be hooked. But if you're not worried about getting hooked and you kind of expect to be hooked, that's just somehow people play. They play aggressive. You go down. It happens. This is a really good perk that basically cuts off the audio for the killers, and they can't reach your aura. And with Hangman's Trick and the other buffed aura perks, this is going to be a really good perk to run when you're getting off the hook. Her final perk is Red Herring. You've noticed that people pay attention to whatever makes the loudest noise. After repairing a generator for at least 3 seconds, it will be highlighted to you with a yellow aura. The generator stays highlighted until it's fully repaired, or you repair a new generator or enter a locker. Entering any locker will trigger a loud noise indicator for the killer at the highlighted generator's location. Red Herring can only be triggered once every 60 seconds. The news edit out what is burdensome and complex, which is the truth. Now, this perk is basically Pebble on crack. I've seen it work. I didn't think it would actually get anyone, but it's one of those perks where you just kind of sit there, watch it, and you say, wow, that actually worked. I don't think this is going to be a staple in a lot of builds, but if you do like distraction, stealth style builds, keeping the killer busy, this is definitely going to be a perk that people are going to want to run, no matter how niche. And that is the lore and perks of the new survivor, Zarina Kassir. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.